The impact of adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, can be long-lasting and severe, particularly on the developing brain of a child. During childhood, the brain is rapidly developing and forming new connections between neurons, which are the cells that transmit information in the brain. ACEs can disrupt this process, causing changes in the brain's structure and function. This, in turn, can have a negative impact on a child's behavior, emotions, and ability to learn and function in the world. Studies have shown that ACEs can lead to alterations in the structure of the brain, particularly in areas that are involved in emotion regulation, stress response, and memory. For example, the amygdala, which is responsible for processing emotions like fear and anxiety, can become overactive in response to stress and trauma. This can lead to increased anxiety and difficulty regulating emotions, which can make it difficult for children to cope with stress and navigate social situations. ACEs can also impact the development of the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and planning. This can lead to difficulties with executive functioning, including problems with attention, planning, and organization. Additionally, ACEs can cause changes in the stress response system, which is responsible for producing hormones like cortisol in response to stress. When children experience trauma, their stress response system can become overactive, leading to chronically elevated levels of cortisol. This can have negative effects on the developing brain, including changes in the size of the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and learning. ACEs can have a profound impact on the developing brain, including directing a process called synaptic pruning. What is synaptic pruning? Let's look outside to explore this feature in our brains. Synaptic pruning and gardening may seem like completely unrelated topics, but there are actually similarities between the two that can help explain what synaptic pruning is and why it's important. In gardening, pruning is the process of removing dead or unwanted parts of a plant, such as branches or leaves, in order to promote growth and increase yield. Similarly, synaptic pruning is the process of removing unnecessary or redundant connections between neurons in the brain in order to promote efficient neural communication and healthy brain development. Just as pruning helps the plant focus its energy and resources on growing healthy new growth, synaptic pruning helps the brain eliminate weak or unused neural connections so that it can more effectively focus its resources on developing and maintaining strong neural pathways. Additionally, both gardening and synaptic pruning require a certain level of skill and expertise in order to be done correctly. In gardening, it's important to know which parts of the plant to prune and how much to cut in order to promote healthy growth. In the same way, in synaptic pruning, the brain must be able to accurately identify which neural connections are no longer necessary in order to ensure that the pruning process doesn't result in unnecessary loss of important connections. Synaptic pruning occurs in the brain during childhood and adolescence. This process helps to streamline the brain's neural networks and optimize its efficiency. However, when a child experiences ACEs, the process of synaptic pruning can become disrupted. Traumatic experiences can cause the brain to produce excess stress hormones, which can lead to the overpruning of synapses in certain areas of the brain. This overpruning can have a negative impact on the development of the brain. For example, it can lead to a decrease in the number of synapses in areas of the brain that are important for emotional regulation and cognitive control. This, in turn, can lead to difficulties with emotional regulation, impulsivity, and other behavioral problems. Let's take a look at Samantha to help illustrate how ACEs can cause excessive and detrimental synaptic pruning during childhood. Samantha is a 6-year-old girl who lives with her mother and stepfather. Her stepfather frequently drinks alcohol and becomes physically abusive towards her mother. Samantha witnesses these incidents of abuse and often feels scared and helpless. As a result of her experiences, Samantha's brain produces an excess of stress hormones, which leads to overpruning of synapses in certain areas of her brain. If certain synapses and neuronal pathways are not repeatedly activated, they may be discarded, and the capabilities they promised may be diminished. For example, all infants have the genetic predisposition to form strong attachments to their primary caregivers. But if a child's caregivers are unresponsive or threatening, and the attachment process is disrupted, the child's ability to form any healthy relationships during his or her life may be impaired. Specifically, the synapses in the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation, may be overpruned. This overpruning can lead to difficulties for Samantha in controlling her emotion, making good decisions, and forming healthy and strong relationships. She may become more impulsive and have difficulty regulating her behavior in response to stress or frustration. Fortunately, there are ways to mitigate the impact of ACEs on synaptic pruning. Positive childhood experiences, such as nurturing relationships with caregivers, stable environments, and opportunities for play and exploration, can help to promote healthy brain development and foster resilience in children. Prevention and early intervention are also important in addressing the impact of ACEs on synaptic pruning. Providing support and resources to families, promoting healthy relationships, and addressing the root causes of childhood trauma can help to prevent ACEs from occurring in the first place and mitigate their impact on the developing brain. By understanding the impact of ACEs on synaptic pruning and promoting prevention and early intervention efforts, we can work towards creating a healthier and more resilient society for all.